For the last 4 years, we have been digging into the secrets of the Portsmouth Gaseous Diffusion Plant, 70 years of radioactive and chemical contamination. A community ravaged by cancer, families broken, government silence. The truth is buried beneath decades of lies.
For years, residents living near the former Portsmouth Gaseous Diffusion Plant have suffered from various health conditions, including rare cancers, linked to operations at the now-defunct nuclear facility. In 2024, renowned epidemiologist Joe Mangano released a groundbreaking study revealing that Pike County has some of the highest cancer rates in the nation. Over the decades, radioactive material has been vented, leaked, and released into the environment. Equally disturbing is the spread of millions of pounds of toxic chemicals across the region. Chemicals like chromium, vinyl chloride, trichloroethylene TCE, polychlorinated biphenyls, and countless other volatile compounds. This toxic cocktail has made its way into the creeks and streams surrounding the massive facility. In 2019, Zahns Corner Middle School was permanently closed after radioactive isotopes were discovered inside. Over the years, several students and staff have died from rare cancers. For many, Pike County, Ohio, in rural Appalachia, is a community sacrificed by the United States government.
This is the former Portsmouth Gaseous Diffusion Plant, an aging Cold War relic that once enriched uranium for nuclear weapons. It's the size of a small town, with buildings stretching nearly a mile long. But what's hidden here is far more dangerous than it looks. For decades, radioactive materials and toxic chemicals were stored and processed here, but it didn't all stay on site. Testing has found enriched uranium, americium-241 neptunium, and other radioactive isotopes miles outside the fence line, in schools, in homes, and in the soil where kids play. Zahns Corner Middle School shut down in 2019 after radioactive particles were detected inside. Families have reported rare cancers, birth defects, and illnesses they believe are tied to this site. They were told it was safe, but what if it never was? This is X326, the heart of America's secret uranium enrichment program. And this is the tall stack, the launch point for radioactive emissions the public never saw coming. They called them midnight rockets, but there was no fire, no countdown, just silence and fallout. The Department of Energy knew. Their own contractors documented the radioactive gases, technetium, uranium hexafluoride, vented straight into the air. Residents reported yellow snow, metallic dust on their cars. They didn't know they were breathing in decades of weapons-grade poison. In 2023, independent testing found technetium and plutonium in the soil, the water, and the dust. The midnight rockets didn't end. They just went silent. This wasn't an accident, it was a design, and the fallout is still falling.
You would not believe the kidney diseases and the cancers and the heart problems, the strokes, diabetes. They're just full of it here, and it's not from smoking. They like to blame everything on smoking.
What do you think it's from?
I think it's from the plant. I know it's from the plant because I worked there. I'm a worker from the plant, and I'm a whistleblower since 1983. And I got hired as an electrician, and I did electrical work, so I had not a clue that they were in this process making highly enriched uranium to 99% plus weapons-grade material. And they fed plutonium into this plant in as far back as 1953 from the research I've done.
People like Vina and all the other people that have worked there and spoke up for years and tried to do something, nobody listened. But when they found it in a school, that's what made people wake up. And when they said, oh my gosh, our kids are being exposed, that's when people started waking up.
To me, it's nothing new because we found radiation in that corner back in the 90s. And they overlooked it.
The community has been affected just as hard or harder because as you all know, the cancer rate in Ohio is the highest. The Pike County is the highest in the state of Ohio. So for us to get compensated, to have people compensated, that's what we're fighting for. That's what we are asking for, because there's too many people, kids, and like I said the last meeting, been following a 2-year-old little girl named Darcy who has cancer. And bless her little heart, she just got to go back to church. She's 2 years old. And a 2-year-old shouldn't have to fight cancer, And none of us are supposed to be able to have these things, but we do. And when you're told it's environmental, that's what, it's another knife in the back to these people.
Now closed and partially dismantled, Ports is ground zero for claims of radioactive contamination.
I mean, the risk is here.
In nearby communities, now riddled with rare cancers.
We've got, alarming cancer rates
that are killing children.
That was my best friend, and my son.
In 1978, more than 26,000 pounds of deadly uranium hexafluoride was accidentally released at the Piketon atomic plant. In another serious incident at the Piketon atomic plant, a worker was in an area where contaminated waste products was stored when they were exposed to uranium hexafluoride, burning their lungs and causing permanent damage.
people in Pike and Scioto out in Ohio.
The creek has been sampled and radioactive material has been found, including plutonium and neptunium, two very dangerous and highly radioactive elements. What you will see in this following picture is a pipe that comes from the atomic plant. And next to it, in the stream, you can see a bluish-green plume emanating from this rusted pipe.
For decades, radioactive contamination has been found in the waterways surrounding the former Portsmouth Gaseous Diffusion Plant. But yet, after all these years, no signs have ever been placed warning residents of the radioactive dangers in the local creeks and streams.
I'm waking up to ash and dust. I wipe my brow and I sweat my rust. I'm breathing in the chemicals.
A growing health crisis in Pike County, Ohio, has drawn national attention to a region with some of the highest cancer and premature death rates in the U.S. Decades of uranium enrichment and ongoing demolition at the Portsmouth Gaseous Diffusion Plant are linked to troubling health trends across Pike and 6 neighboring counties. A study by epidemiologist Joseph J. Mangano of the Radiation and Public Health Project highlights alarming increases in cancer, infant mortality, and premature deaths in downwind communities. Between 2021 and 2023, Pike County's premature death rate was 107% above the national average, up from 85% between 2017 and 2020. Over 750 premature deaths occurred in a county of just 27,000 people. Cancer rates in Pike and neighboring counties, Adams, Gallia, Jackson, Lawrence, Scioto, and Vinton, were 17.5% above the national average between 2015 and 2019. Infant mortality was 31.9% higher than the U.S. average between 1999 and 2020. In 2019, concerns about radioactive contamination peaked when Zons Corner Middle School in Piketon permanently closed after enriched uranium and neptunium-237 were detected inside the building. Several students and staff had developed rare cancers. Recently, the district sold the building to a Christian ministry planning to reopen it as a STEM academy, reigniting safety concerns. The Portsmouth plant, which enriched uranium for nuclear weapons and reactors from 1954 to 2001, released hazardous radioactive particles like americium-241, plutonium-238, and uranium-235 into the environment. Though enrichment ceased in 2001, the plant remains active with demolition projects. Experts warn that open-air demolition of contaminated structures may release additional radioactive particles. Critics argue that DOE air monitoring detects only background radiation levels, failing to capture the true extent of contamination. Families across Pike County report high rates of rare cancers and aggressive diseases, especially among children. Many suspect exposure to radioactive materials from the plant. The closure of Zons Corner and deaths of students and staff serve as grim reminders of the crisis. Parents and advocates continue to demand answers about the plant's role in contamination and efforts to protect future generations. Despite mounting evidence, the DOE has proposed new projects at the Portsmouth site, including uranium purification and experimental reactors, sparking further opposition. Advocates call for independent investigations and stronger public health monitoring, arguing stricter oversight is urgently needed. Mangano's study underscores the devastating, long-term consequences of radioactive contamination. The crisis, compounded by the school closure, highlights the urgent need for accountability. For Pike County residents, the fight for justice continues.
Knows. The governor knows.
My oldest grandson is a street. He is a red street.
Take a sign I'm holding for him.
Why are we out here today?
We're out here to protest the auction of this school. This school is contaminated. It was deemed contaminated in 2019. We protested then. The shirt is from that protest in 2019. My sister started the group. We want this to stop. Too many kids have died here. Too many adults that worked here died, all of cancer. We're just done with the lies. We're done with the lies. We're done with the nothing being done. There's many, many documents from the past. We're starting with now.
So why are we out here today?
We're here because this school is contaminated. On April 27, 2019, Robert Edwards, Jeremy Davis, and Greg Symington from DOE lied to the community about the level of contamination at this school. We have the documents, DOE's ACER reports, that says, in fact, that Camp Creek and Otway had higher numbers for americium and neptunium-237 that closed down this school. They hid those documents. They fired the environmental manager. They hid the amount of contamination. They're doing the background wrong. This is a conspiracy to fraud. They are making the school system pay for a school that they contaminated and take care of it. It's not the school's responsibility, and it's sure not the responsibility of the community to become the Ned Beatty of Ohio. And if you know what I'm talking about, deliverance. That's what I'm talking about. And we ain't going to squeal like no pig. We're not going to do it. J.D. Vance is nothing more than a Hollywood hillbilly and he's a rhinestone cowboy. Senator Brown wants to represent us. Do your jobs. The governor signed documents that says that there is undiluted plutonium at Portsmouth. Ike White from DOE, their environmental manager one, says there is no plutonium. Let's go to the table, have a finding of fact with documents on the table and see who's right.
So why are we here today?
We're here to let the public know that this school cannot be sold because it's contaminated, and 11 children have died from the school. And with the new results, 15 miles away, air miles from this plant is contaminated with the product from the Piketon plant. We have plutonium in the creeks, and I want them to put up signs, no swimming in those creeks. So hopefully at the meeting of the SSAB boarding, I can bring that up to them. Chris has been working on this facility for almost 40 years now, trying to get the public aware of the transuranics that we had at Piketon. We've had the transuranics here since 1954 when we reprocessed reactor fuel from other sites like West Valley, New York, and Hanford and Savannah River. And then in 1992 or 3, Russians sent transuranics here. The uranium here that had transuranics, and we reprocessed it until almost 2000. Nobody in the community has ever been told that there's plutonium here. Contractors continue to deny it, even though we have their documents that says they had plutonium in the X705. They reprocessed it, or they did an experimental with it because all those workers got sick in X705. Our creeks are contaminated from Little Beaver Creek, the Big Beaver Creek, to the Scioto River. I have the EPA here before we tested these fish, and these fish are chemically and radioactive contaminated. And so it's time that they put signs, and it's time that they come out and have a public meeting and have credibility for what's going on here, accountable. They need to be accountable.
The governor knows. He's lying. He's keeping quiet. He's letting them kill us. The governor is staying silent.
Now, I want you to raise your hands if you blame our government, the U.S. Department of Energy and Ports, for causing your cancers.
Talking about contamination. This is a letter, and Mike Lyon's name is on the bottom of it. Basically, Ike White, DOE, has stated we never processed plutonium at this facility. This letter talks about the undiluted plutonium that was brought in 1985. In national labs, I was there at the 26. I was the DOE OSHA investigator that sent me to school to become certified. This is the lab results from the 326 that was taken down. So there's plutonium or polonium in there. In the actual DOE report, that was removed because some of this material was from the Russian material that was brought in 1993 and ran and shipped out in 94 before privatization was actually established. Saying plutonium 238, 239, and 240 plus neptunium, magnesium, and all the other transrams.
In early 1956, this huge plant on a 3,700-acre site was in full operation, months ahead of schedule and hundreds of millions of dollars under estimates, a significant contribution to our national defense program. Few construction projects in history were of this unusual magnitude or so taxed the ingenuity of engineers and contractors. Here, some of the largest buildings in the world were built to separate the tiny atoms of uranium, utilizing a remarkable process to achieve this in mass quantities. One building is so large, you could put 3 Yankee stadiums inside and still have room for a football field. Almost 10 million square feet of floor space in the permanent buildings. Almost 70 million man-hours in construction.
Hello everyone, my name is Jason Sally, and today I am heading to Piketon, Ohio to visit the Portsmouth Gaseous Diffusion Plant, also known by locals as the A plant. Today I'm going to be meeting with one of the original whistleblowers who has graciously decided to give me a tour of the facility, so to speak, along the roads that are still open to the public, to get a first-hand look at the plant and the tens and tens of thousands of depleted uranium cylinders that are just out in the open to the elements and whatnot. This facility has a long history of radioactive contamination. In 2019, Zons Corner Middle School in Pike County was closed permanently after radioactive contaminants were found within the building. So today, join me on this journey as we head to Piketon, Ohio, to learn more about the past, current, and future dangers associated with the site. Today, we're going to get a first-hand look at the atomic plant.
slurry wall that they built to stop the contamination, but it's not working. It's going under the slurry wall. But that's what they call the slurry wall.
And when did they put that in? The time they was building the plant?
Get rid of this Jeep. He got back around, that's all.
Yeah, I seen him coming back.
From here, the old steam plant that used to be right in there is where they burnt radioactive PCB oil and everything, and they put it in the land there and rotated it like a garden. And this is where the office buildings were, but they tore them down and put these trailers in them. There's the 720 building. That's the machine shop. They did everything in there, and it was open to the atmosphere. Had motors, paint shop, you name it. They worked on it in that building right there, and it came up to be one of the contaminated buildings on site. And see where the round thing is there?
Yeah.
That's the X705 building.
Okay.
And that's where they did the experiments with the plutonium. And over here, we see all these whale things.
Mm-hmm.
That's supposed to be, I believe it was plutonium that they were finding coming off site. And this is the X333 building over here.
Okay.
And there's the guards.
Just down.
Got the fence down. By the guard post, we can get around a little further. Nope, there it is. Now that's the water tower up there. And then this is the back of the 333 building, and all the switch yards and all that stuff they took down, and they put it in junkyards. They gave it to people in the junkyard, the towers and the switch yards and all that.
So probably hundreds of tons of radioactive material, building material, has been just shown out.
One of them went to the junkyard near me on 104. That big shadow carrier, I believe, went to the junkyard in Chillicothe Shoemakers.
Wow.
I have pictures of it somewhere, the one with the 78 spill. Okay, these are that's the 330 building, and those are office buildings that they brought in. They brought all these office buildings in and tore down the other office buildings because they were contaminated. The women that worked in the offices were getting breast cancer.
Wow.
And the 326 building is that building they tore down beside the 330 building.
Okay.
It's supposed to be all gone now. There's at work there, and their exposures. They were so contaminated they had to send them down to Oak Ridge, Tennessee to get their body counts down.
Oh, wow.
And Mr. Salisbury that worked in there gave me a call, and he said, he said, of all the workers on plant site, I felt that I needed to call you and tell you about these because I feel like they should have kept monitoring us, and they didn't.
Our guide showed us an area where radioactive contaminants had already been buried. In the distance, you can see hills. Those hills are the location of this highly radioactive material that has been placed underground.
49 building is over there, I think. And they should have a guard shack so you can't get very far. It should be over in here.
In the distance is where you can see the current radioactive dump being placed on the site.
Of gaseous diffusion in the atomic energy program, let's look at the sequence of events that produce fissionable materials. First, the procurement of raw materials. From both foreign and domestic sources, the uranium ores are gathered and concentrated. Second, the preparation of feed materials. The concentrates are refined and processed for either of two production methods. One, as a uranium metal in rods and slugs for transmutation into plutonium in the reactors at Hanford or Savannah River. Two, as a gas, uranium hexafluoride, UF6, from which fissionable uranium-235 is separated by the gaseous diffusion process not only at Portsmouth, but at Oak Ridge and Paducah as well. The third step concerns utilization of fissionable materials for armaments of war or for purposes of peace in science, agriculture, industry, and medicine. Gaseous diffusion through porous barriers is the most efficient method for separating the lighter U-235 isotope from the U-238 isotope of uranium. The actual separation is accomplished by means of a barrier which contains billions of holes, each smaller than 2/millionths of an inch. The U-235 molecules in the gas, being lighter, move faster and pass through the barrier more quickly. The enriched portion of the gas is then sent successively through other barriers for further concentration. Since uranium contains only 1 part of U-235 to 140 parts of U-238, several thousand such barriers or stages are passed before the required degree of enrichment is achieved. At each stage, the residual gas, depleted in U-235, is also withdrawn and recycled through successively lower stages of barrier.
They're worried about the jobs.
Yeah.
They want the votes from the workers. They don't care about this community. This community's been sacrificed.
Vina Kali, who has joined us on this journey, is one of the original whistleblowers. She's been referred to as the Aaron Brockovich of Appalachia. She began working at the plant in the early 1980s as an electrician, but she soon found out the dangers that were lurking there, waiting for each employee at the Piketon atomic plant. 1983, Vina filed a complaint with the United States Department of Labor over unsafe conditions that workers were facing at the Piketon atomic plant.
This advanced planning and scheduling of materials, equipment, and personnel were extremely important because the plant was designed to go into operation or on stream as soon as each unit or segment was completed in a process building, even though construction continued in other parts of the same building.
This is the Huntington Pilot Plant, a facility shrouded in secrecy. Built in a different era, the Huntington Pilot Plant, or HPP, located in West Virginia, played a pivotal role in the nation's atomic ambitions. But as the years passed, its secrets remained locked away. Workers at the secret facility was exposed to neptunium and plutonium. The Huntington facility received nickel from reactors at Hansford and Savannah River, as well as the Paducah and the Piketon atomic plant. Former atomic workers and activists believe that plutonium and other residue on materials sent to Huntington for recycling and decontamination eventually made the Huntington plant contaminated beyond cleanup. The material that the Huntington plant received had been used at these various atomic energy plants as part of the chemical flow. Huntington's job was to reduce or remove the radioactivity and separate the compounds. For instance, once processed separated nickel carbonyl and enriched uranium. In 1978 through 1979, the HPP was dismantled, and its remnants were quietly transported to a classified landfill. 59 dump trucks and 4 rail cars carried the radioactive building materials. The dump site was located on 4 acres on the grounds of the Portsmouth Gaseous Diffusion Plant in Piketon. Most of the radioactive secrets were buried along with the plant.
Plans are currently in the works to dig up the old nickel plant and remove the contaminated material in order for the land to be sold for industrial use. Is there anyone interested in buying some radioactive land?
There's thunder on the mountain, there's fire on the ground, and off somewhere I can hear your voice calling. There's thunder on the mountain, there's fire on the ground, and off somewhere I can hear your voice calling. Yeah. There's thunder on the mountain, there's fire on the ground, and off somewhere I can hear your voice calling. There's thunder on the mountain, there's fire on the ground, and off somewhere I can hear your voice calling.
In 1985, another large release of dangerous uranium hexafluoride happened, this time in the X-33 processing building. 108 pounds of uranium hexafluoride filled the place.